Hey everyone, it's Susan Pierce Thompson and welcome to the weekly vlog. So I'm back in my office this week and I want to introduce you to someone. I have a prop. I hate to call him a prop, but I want to introduce you to my teddy bear, Roster. So I want to tell you the story of Roster here, and we are going to relate this to your Bright Line Eating journey. So Roster is clearly very old. Yes, he does not have a face. There's a story behind that. So let me go way back. Roster was found in San Diego in a department store when I was out with my mom and my grandma. I was 6 or 7 or 8 years old. I don't rightly remember. And he was in a bin of Rosters. So there were tons of them. And his fur was the softest thing I had ever felt in my whole life. And I wanted him so badly, and I said, please, 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 I want him, please, 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 please. And they agreed to buy him for me. He had a dark brown fancy tuxedo bow. He was a very dapper gent, I tell you. And, I'm probably rubbing him all over the microphone. Sorry if the sound has been awful. Roster was my teddy bear, and I kept him for all those years. So what is that? I'm 43, so let's say I was 7. Okay, never make yourself do math on video. It's a very bad idea. 36 years ago, is that right? Okay, sorry. Okay, so long time ago. Roster is very old. And, he went everywhere with me. Not to school or anything, but he lived on my bed. And then when I grew up, I started traveling with him. So at some point I realized I've always been a traveler. I was a kid. I used to fly alone when I was 5. Kind of crazy, right? But I did. Anyway, I didn't have Roster back then, but at some point I learned that Roster, I always get a window seat, and Roster stuffs perfectly in that gap between the seat and the wall of the window on an airplane. There's a big gap there. It's right where you want to be laying your head, but even their little airplane pillows fall right through that gap, right? It's totally obnoxious. Well, Roster stuffs right in there and creates a perfect pillow. And then at night, Roster goes underneath my arm and he's ergonomic, he supports my arm so that I'm not yanking on my shoulder muscles while I sleep, which is good because I carry a lot of tension in my shoulders right there. So I sleep with Roster every night. My husband is such a prince. He never teases me about it. He never complains about it. There's a teddy bear between us every night, and I'm sleeping with my arms around my teddy bear every night. Roster has been around the world 8 times at least. He's been to so many countries I can't count them. He flies with me everywhere. And so let me tell you why he doesn't have a face. So when Alexis, our daughter Alexis, was 2, she plucked out his eyes. So there went the eyes. And then about 1.5 years ago, we got a dog, a German short-haired pointer. They're very feisty. And the dog got enamored with Roster's nose and basically chewed off Roster's whole face to get that nose off. And so I was having an awful day too. I just burst into tears. I saw Roster stuffing coming out of his face, and his face was just torn up. And David, my husband, got a sewing kit from the sideboard and sewed up his face for me and handed him back. And then within a month or 2, the dog had chewed off his face again. So I don't know if that time it was me that sewed up his face. I think it was. Anyway, he gets holes and I have to sew them up periodically. I went at some point 5 or 8 years ago or something and bought this other ribbon for his neck. Okay, so this is Roster. I've left him. Oh my gosh, I left him in a hotel in Vancouver. We went back and talked to the cleaning staff. I left him recently at another hotel, and I went back and called and, told them to check with the cleaning staff. I left my bear in the bed, and he always gets rescued. All right, so here's the deal. Here's why I told you all about Roster like that. There's a point. In the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp, pretty far in, there's a video that talks about if this is easy for you, I want you to hold on tight and do not let it go. I know from experience, because I've worked with so many people and I've done it myself, that when you stick with bright lines consecutively, squeaky clean, and that automaticity kicks in, you start to think it's a little too easy. Like it's just going so well that like, how was it ever hard? How is this a struggle? It's so easy. And in that video, I say, if it's easy for you, don't be fooled. Like the minute you step off the path, it gets wicked hard, like dramatically harder. You might never get back on the path fully. Like there are people who then struggle forever. So you don't want to do that. So what I say is, and Roster, I'm sorry, sweetheart, I'm just going to set him down here for a second. All right. What I say in that video is, I want you to think of your Bright Line Eating recovery like a crystal vase. And like a Waterford crystal vase, you know, like a Tiffany, whatever, like picture multi-$1,000, like, you know, most priceless family heirloom ever crystal vase. And what do you do with a crystal vase like that? You don't juggle with it, that's for sure. You take care of it. You protect it. You don't bobble it. You give it you give it some margin. You give it a safe place on a really nice table with like, you know, so no one's going to knock it. You're careful with a crystal vase like that. And that's what I tell people is, don't break the vase. It's like not possible to put it back together quite the way it was. Okay? And I know there's lots of people who have squeaky clean bright lines who remember that and it affects them because they say to me, long time later, crystal vase intact. You know, here I am, 754 days, crystal vase intact, never broken my bright lines. It's easy, but I'm keeping it that way. And we have people in our community like that. If you're one of them, I love you. Congratulations. I'm so proud of you. So proud of you. So I've been thinking lately about the crystal vase metaphor because, you know, I don't have an intact crystal vase. If you've been around any length of time, you know that. I have had, you know, at the beginning I did. I started this and for 6 months I had a perfectly intact crystal vase. I do want to say that there have been times where I felt like I got the crystal vase back, like those 6 years where I didn't break my bright lines once. I felt like I had a crystal vase again. I'd had relapses in my past, but it felt like the distant past. Bright line eating was super easy. I felt like I had a crystal vase again. But what if you feel like your recovery is gnarly, bumpy, war-torn? I want to offer a metaphor for you. You may not have a crystal vase, but maybe you have a roster. Maybe you have a recovery that is still around because it's so well loved that you just won't give it up. Like roster and I are unstoppable. Like I go to town for this bear. Like I go to bat for this bear. Like this bear, if this bear gets lost, like priority number 1 is to find the bear. So maybe if you don't have a crystal vase, you have a roster. You have a bear. You have an old, loved teddy bear. And it's beloved because you've been through so much together and because you are tenacious in not letting it go, in keeping it around, and in doing what it takes, whether it's by buying a new ribbon or sewing up its face or whatever. Not that it looks perfect anymore, but I don't think after the stories I've told you about roster that you would be surprised if I said that of all the objects in my house, roster is the most precious to me. Other than my kids' equivalent of their rosters, right? They've got Bunny, they've got Lion, they've got Mimi. They're the most precious objects in the house because, you know, they're going to throw a temper tantrum if we don't have them. Other than that, roster's up there with like the small handful of most precious objects in our house. I'm sure you're not surprised to hear that, right? We go way back. So if you feel like you have tattered your recovery, your bright line eating recovery to the point where it's not valuable anymore, or there's something kind of irreparably damaged about it, what I want to say is all that matters is that you love it so much that you never let it die, that you keep it around. And just that makes it so valuable. So valuable. So if you don't have a crystal vase, I just want to propose that maybe you have a roster. Roster, by the way, is spelled W-R-A-U-C-E-T-U-R. There's a story behind that. I was in the car after we bought them, and I was thinking of a name, and I announced the name. They're like, what? Roster? Like, why? I'm like, I don't know. Roster. And then my mom and grandma were talking about this old George Bernard Shaw quote that had just appeared in some magazine or something about how English language is so bizarre that, especially in terms of its spelling, that the word fish might as well be spelled G-H-O-T-I. G-H is in trough, O is in women, T-I is in nation, fish. G-H-O-T-I. And I was just learning to spell. I was at the age where I was just learning to write and spell. And that struck me as the most witty, clever, amazing thing. So not only did I decide to name him Roster, but I decided to try to spell it segment by segment in the most creative way I could. So that's why it's W-R-A-U-C-E-T-U-R. So anyway, if you have a roster, I'm with you. I don't have a crystal vase anymore, but I have a roster. And yeah, pretty happy I do. So that's the weekly vlog, and I'll see you next week.